What is a survival myth that is completely wrong and could get you killed? The YouTube videos on how to unarm an attacker from close range. You'll die before you can yell yee-haw. Yeah, if you have not trained extensively in real self-defense, you should never try to fight an armed opponent. Just give them what they want or run. Those videos usually have the person letting the moves be put on them very easily, when in reality a lot of those moves need to be executed at extremely fast speed with practiced precision. Otherwise you will just end up in a wrestling match against someone with a knife, which usually won't end well. There's a video of a soldier showing how to win in a knife fight. The countdown starts, and as soon as possible he just books it. I used to run cash parking lots for events. Attendants regularly would have to handle thousands of dollars in cash, sometimes alone or nearly so. I instituted what we called the $200 rule. No attendant should have more than $200 in their hand at any time, ever. Cash over $200 went into a pocket until I could pick it up. The plan was, if they were ever mugged, had a knife or gun put in their face etc., they were to instantly take that $200 and throw it at the mugger and run like hell towards the nearest well-lit populated area. The mugger would of course be too busy picking up the $200 to injure the attendant and or get the big stash of money in the attendant's pocket. It happened twice. Both times the attendant got away no problem and we sacrificed $200 or less for his/her safety. Money well spent. The first mistake is to look for food and water first, before having a shelter up, to keep yourself dry and warm. Edit: when I say shelter first it includes having a fire too, which I forgot to mention. When you are wet and exposed to the element, your core body temperature can drop and you can get hypothermia if it gets too cold, and you would burn more calories than necessary. A big reason to building a shelter too is to also keep yourself off the ground, because the ground is an infinite heat sink, which means you lose your body heat way faster than you would think and will be more exposed to the cold/element. Guys, yes, it's good to be near a water source, but remember that it's always colder around rivers, streams, lakes, and oceans. Make sure you are able to easily gather shelter/fire material within the area, plus finding a prime location to set up shelter. I feel like a book RN. Thanks for the silver. Shelter, water, food. In that order. Not quite as sexy and interesting as the rest of these, but if you're walking alone at night, putting a key between each finger with the thought that you can punch someone and they'll be impaled by 3 keys is useless. You're much more likely to hurt the webbing on your fingers, since the grip you have on each key will be really weak. Instead, put a single key between your thumb and forefinger, parallel to your thumb, and make a fist. This still isn't a great defense, but it is an improvement over simply a fist. Also, don't try to kick a man in the crotch unless you have an amazing shot, in which case, you're probably better off running anyway. If you miss, or don't kick hard enough, both of which are more likely in either case, when you're likely panicking, you're just going to cause mild discomfort and piss him off even more. There was a girl I knew in college who got assaulted. She took the whole handful of keys with the keys coming out of the bottom of her fist and just went to town on the guy's face. It worked and the guy was arrested because the facial injuries made him easy to recognize. Probably not the best tactic, but hard object plus adrenaline got the job done. If you ever find yourself in snake country, make as much noise as possible. Most people want to avoid snakes, so stay quiet, but they are more scared of you than you are of them. Talk loudly, stomp, but obviously keep an eye and ear out for any fellas who don't want you to be there. Source: Australian. Except for the death adder, which will lie there and ignore 19 people stepping over it, then bite the 20th one who has the bad luck to step on it. Easy solution: just get bit by a death subtractor. If you have to forage for food, avoid mushrooms entirely. Odds are so slim you will find an edible kind that you're much better off looking for things like nuts, seeds, and berries. They also hold negligible amounts of calories, so even if you are knowledgeable about fungi, it still isn't worth it. Guess the only scenario where you might go for it is if you have knowledge on edible mushrooms and stumble upon a grove full of them. Wear a seatbelt. There's myths about it being bad if you go into a lake or there's a fire, but 1, that is an incredibly tiny proportion of car crashes, and 2, if you're in that situation, you're far more likely to be knocked out and die of inaction if you're not wearing a seatbelt. I know this is a mundane tip, but you're far more likely to be in a life-threatening car crash than be stabbed or be in a falling elevator. Wear a seatbelt. Wear your fucking seatbelt. Apparently passengers can smash into other passengers when they are not wearing seatbelts. Rescue breaths are wildly overrated in most movies and TV shows. You'll see someone in cardiac arrest, and the rescuer will stop giving compressions and focus on breathing into a person's mouth and blammo. Awake, alert, alive. Nope. Don't do that. Your body does store a fairly decent amount of oxygen in its blood at all times. If someone in front of you odds and their mouth is covered with saliva/vomit, or someone collapses in front of you of a suspected cardiac arrest, your plan of action is twofold. Are they breathing? Do they have a pulse? This is easy to fuck up, especially in a moment of panic. My rule, as an EMS provider, is that if you don't feel it in 10 seconds, it's not there. Start compressions. If they are not in cardiac arrest, they will let your ass know, and the law covers you under Good Samaritan clauses in most of these cases. If you are the only person attending to this body, do not stop and give rescue breaths if help is on the way and will be there soon. It takes about 4 to 7 decent compressions to get blood recirculating in the body after stopping to give mouth to mouth. That's a lot of blood, carrying a lot of vital oxygen reserves that aren't making it to the brain. Obviously, if you're a long way out from help and you feel safe to do so, give rescue breaths. But it should never be priority #1. BTW, if you hear ribs crack, make a face, make vomit noises. If you have to, tell the person their bones are fucking grossing you out, but don't stop compressions. Because what are compressions? That's right. They are number fucking 1. I work in an ER. A patient went suddenly unresponsive after standing up to get onto a cart. We weren't sure if we felt a pulse or not, but our 10 seconds was up, so my coworker started compressions. Or I should say, compression, singular. She delivered a single high quality compression, and he immediately screamed and threw his arms and legs up. Turns out his BP dropped when he stood up, causing him to pass out, and was so low we couldn't even feel a carotid pulse. I told that coworker I want her doing my compressions should I ever need them. Herbivorous animals are friendly and peaceful, so you are safe being around them, and their presence will show you where food is. Seriously, everything from cows to deer can and will kill you if you make it angry. It is usually a good idea, if you are in the wilds, not to get near any large wild animal, but herbivores can often be even more aggressive than the predators. If a predator attacks you, you have a fairly good chance of scaring it off, especially if it's smaller than you, because it's likely only looking for food. If a herbivore attacks you, you're fucked because it genuinely wants to kill you. If you get stabbed with anything, don't pull it out, since it could be the thing that's preventing you from bleeding out. Instead, immobilize it and go to the hospital, where they can stop the bleeding when they remove the object. It won't kill you, but don't pee on a jellyfish sting. It will actually release more of the toxin. Pee directly on the jellyfish to show dominance. Vinegar is really good for those stings. So vinegar is good, pee is bad. Don't eat snow to stay hydrated if you're in a winter survival situation. Losing the heat to the snow while eating it is more dangerous than dehydration. Heat it up, or let it melt in a container first to lose less heat. You do not need to wait 24 hours to report a missing person. If you think someone is missing, report it as such. The faster a missing person report is filed, the greater the chance the person will be found. Especially if it's a child. Missing children are at high risk during the first 24 hours, especially if abducted. In 76% of child abduction murders, the victim was dead within 3 hours. 88.5% were dead in the first 24 hours. The first 48 hours are the most important in missing persons cases too. The 24 hours thing applies mostly to adults, who are unlikely to have been abducted and are more likely to have just gone somewhere. But it all comes down to urgency and vulnerability. For children, you can file if they have been missing for 20 minutes and police will get on it and search the immediate area. This also applies to people who have learning difficulties, depression, suicidal tendencies, dementia, etc. Anything that makes them vulnerable. If you ever fall off a ship/ferry at sea and were lucky enough to be spotted, don't try to swim your way to safety. The more you try to swim, the lesser the chances of survival. Just try to keep afloat and conserve energy and body heat while rescue team do what they're supposed to. Unless you are in hypothermic waters, the best bet always is to stay afloat without trying to swim to somewhere. This information about falling overboard, hypothermia and conditions, survival at sea etc. are based on my own experience of 12 years sailing on merchant ship. Cotton wicks moisture. Cotton is probably the worst material to wear in an outdoor survival situation because it holds moisture and in doing so loses its ability to keep you warm. Yes, this is what wool is for, not cotton.